Guns up, Poke fans. It's time for PokeCast. Broadcasting live at Mr. Bill's Seafood Express, located at 500 East McNeese Street in Lake Charles. Now, here's your host, Jim Gazzolo.
Well, they invited us back for a second week. What a surprise. People were wondering about that. Want to thank Mr. Bills for being the host of this. Want to thank Math for having us on. Want to thank Coach Ryan Allgood for being here with us. But first, I want to make a couple statements that will go into this week's game. First of all, a lot of overreaction from last week. So, it's one game, people. Just so everybody understands that. Everybody out there on 92.9, you understand it's one game. Wasn't a great game, but it is just one game. Let's see where we are after 4 when we head into league contests. Interesting game this week at Florida, talking to the Florida people. They're in basically the same boat. They're wondering about their football team as well. I'm sure LSU is wondering about its football team. And if you think there's panic in those streets, you ought to see what's going on in Clemson, South Carolina. So this is what happens after week one. We grossly overreact and hit the panic buttons. So we'll see where we are in a couple of weeks. With that in mind, Ryan Allgood is with us, offensive line coach. How you doing, Coach?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
So you play a lot. You have a lot of different hats you wear. You're the offensive line coach, assistant head coach, and also recruiting coordinator.
That's correct.
So are you the reason there's 57 new guys here?
Oh, that was a team effort. That was a team effort right there for sure.
What was it like bringing 57 guys in?
It was a busy fall and winter, that's for sure. It was a lot of going on the road last season, trying to recruit and find the right guys, and that was something that was a little bit different whenever we first got here. I guess it was 2 years ago now, but trying to fill up our roster at that point. That time we didn't have a whole lot of time to get everybody in, and so we really wanted to make sure that we did our research and made sure we brought in the right guys, not only for our team and the right players, but also to fit our culture.
Also want to remind everybody here at Mr. Bills that if you have a question, just raise your hand. We'll get a microphone to you. You can ask Coach. You can ask me. If you need another drink, you can ask them too as well, I guess. I think a lot of people overestimated the fact that a lot of people got into the hype of how easy it would be a transition with all new guys.
Right.
While Coach Goff talked about being shocked and surprised about the first game, there was going to be some growing pains, weren't there?
There were, and I think we've practiced so well for the last couple months, and throughout camp, we've had such great practices. So I think even us as within the program and as coaches, we've seen our team play really well for the last couple months, and so we were kind of surprised ourselves, thinking we would go out there and guys would just mesh really well because they had all camp, and wasn't quite the result any of us wanted. But I know that our best ball is definitely ahead of us, so the panic button was definitely not pushed on that end.
One of the things, it is always with the fans, though. Always with fans. One of the things, talking to players, and especially talking to Nate Glantz, one of the things he said was, when you go over the film, he saw plays that he could have made, that could have been made, that weren't made. It's the same thing Florida said. It's the same thing LSU said. How hard is it when you're not making those plays, when you're coming up at one moment, to kind of get back into the swing when you have a new team and you don't know what the trust level is yet?
You know, it's tough because on the sideline, the guys are coming off and everyone's asking the questions, and it's the smallest things are the reason the plays aren't hitting and the big plays aren't happening. And it's one little thing every time. And as a player and as a coach, you're always expecting, okay, well, we can go out there, we're going to do the same thing because the plays are there. We've just got to make them. And it's the smallest thing that keeps it from happening. And a lot of that is with new guys learning how to play together and getting used to it on the game field. It's hard sometimes for those plays to come together all at once. And so they're there, the guys see it, and watching film, the guys saw it where it was just the smallest thing, and it's going to come together, and the guys know that. And I think as we play together more, it's going to happen, and big things are coming.
What's been the attitude this week at practice? Because everybody wants to know, there's always the thought of, well, not again this year after last year and that. What's the attitude been like this week?
Well, so we've changed up practice a little bit because the last few weeks we've been practicing at night because of the heat, and so this week we were actually able to move it to our normal time. So it's still hot out there, and so going out there, the change of times, we were a little bit worried the last couple of practices because the guys were kind of flat, and I think I found out today with my guys. a lot of it was having an earlier practice. They didn't have that extra meal in them. They weren't fueled up right. And so we were out there, and they were just sluggish because of the fuel. And so I made sure today that I reminded my guys to add the extra fuel. And I think today was one of our best practices that we've had since we got here in August.
Okay, so now you get to go into the SEC.
Yes.
Into the Swamp. Have you ever been there? Have you ever played there?
I've been at a game against Florida, but it was not at the Swamp. So I'm looking forward to it.
All the kids they say they're fired up for it.
Yep.
One of the strange things about it, though, is this is a showcase game now in today's world. Do you worry as a recruiting coordinator about the fact that these kids are going to be showing off a little bit because of NIL money and Florida money? Because talking to some other kids, they say this is an opportunity for us to showcase our skills and our team skills.
Right. Well, really on our end, and we take this approach whenever we are recruiting guys, is that you're coming here because of the program, the tradition, but also the culture that's within the program. And I believe that if your culture is strong and it's a really good culture and your players are helping you win games, guys want to be a part of teams that are winning and have great culture. And so for our guys to go out there and show out, I hope they do. I hope we play the best ball there is, and that continues for the rest of the season, because if we are winning games and our culture continues to take over, I think guys want to stay a part of that instead of leave.
Well, you guys talk a lot about culture. You inherited a culture last year that was not the greatest in the world.
Right.
Everybody knew that going in. You guys went through some things, made some decisions. How is the culture now inside the room? How has it changed?
Well, that was the first thing we hit on in our team meeting on Sunday or on Monday whenever we got together. It was we went right to our culture because we felt like our performance on Saturday did not uphold our standards, and we preached tough attitude and discipline throughout camp. The entire off season, the guys are hearing it, they're listening to it. We are trying to get everyone to live it, and we didn't live it on Saturday, and so it's. Obviously, we're still got work to do, but it's something that the guys know, the guys believe in. It's just still building to get it to where we are living our culture day in and day out on the game field as well as everywhere else we are. So it's a lot better, but we still got work to do. And I think as this season goes on, it's only going to improve, just like it did last season throughout the season.
How do coaches take one game, because so much pressure is put on you guys? How do you guys kind of wind down from that one game and kind of build back up to the next week to make sure the players are still in line?
Right. Well, it's definitely not easy. Just like it is not easy for the players. Every coach is putting everything they've got into each game plan and into their players, their position group, to make sure they're ready for everything they can see on game day. It's a lot of really late nights and early mornings, and so a lot goes into it. So whenever it doesn't work out the way that you expected, or even whenever, kind of like I told you, just the smallest things are keeping those plays from hitting. As a coach, it's frustrating, but it's one of those things that's like, how can I help my players to be more successful on the field? And so it's really tough, but we've got to be able to have a short-term memory there and get ready for the next week and try to get our players to do the same, play the next play.
When you go to a Florida, or you play up a level like you are playing up, what is the expectation of play? Because I know, talking to Coach Goff, a lot of it is we got to worry about ourselves. Don't worry about the scoreboard. Make sure we do the things we didn't do the other day to stay focused on being in the right spots and doing our right assignments and making sure we're playing the best ball we can play. How do you get that across?
Well, I think it's just kind of what you've got to preach as a coach and really build it into the team. And especially coming off of a game like we did, it makes it a little bit easier to go to our team and say, guys, this week is about us getting better. We're going to do very similar stuff that we did because we're going to be our team. We're going to do what we do. We just got to get better at it. And we didn't execute well enough on this past Saturday. So especially for me and my guys up front, the offensive line, I told them that this week's about us getting better at our basics, the fundamentals of what we are going to do. And so kind of my message to the guys, that as we watch film, being able to talk through that, it's about us. So it makes it easier coming off of a tough game because it's easy for the guys to refocus in on, let's get back doing what we do. It doesn't matter who lines up across from us, and kind of go that route.
With 57 new guys, how much better is the talent on the field this year from last year?
It's it seems like it's better. I think a lot of position groups have improved with their depth. I think that's a big part of it. I know we've talked a lot about the size that we've got, and that's a large part with the depth. We've got more size on the field, and then we've also got guys that have more size and strength that are backing them up. So I think that does play a big part. Now, obviously, everybody wants to be bigger. I still wish we were, and I know that's what we work on every day. The guys are lifting weights and doing all of that, but with the new guys and bringing everyone in, I think the talent is there. And even us as coaches and in the team, everyone is very confident that we're going to get this thing rolling, and whenever it does, it's not stopping.
So you don't want fans to overreact?
Oh, definitely don't overreact. We've got great players. We're coaching those guys up really well, and really they're going to make us look good here very soon.
Who are some guys that you think will stand out as the year goes on that we didn't really get a good look at the other night?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's on our end, starting off with our trigger man, and we've got two quarterbacks that are going, and Nate's starting right now. But both of those guys that have played phenomenal, and I think they will both throughout the season go to show that they're going to get the job done at an elite level. I think our running back room, we've got three guys in there that are getting the bulk of the reps, and I think all three of those guys are dynamic and explosive, and on any play are going to break it, whether it's catching the ball on a pass route or running the ball on the back end. And then defensively, those guys on the defensive side, I've had to deal with those guys trying to block them for a long time now. So I know those guys are going to be standing out. So there's a lot of guys that you will notice as things go throughout the season that guys are going to stand out and big plays are going to be made. And I know the offensive line, we've got some really good guys there. You probably won't notice them unless something bad happens, but there's some definite standouts out there.
Yeah, LeClaire always comes to mind
as
the guy. He's kind of the leader of that group, isn't he?
He is. Him and Dylan Dozart, those are our two group leaders, and I put a lot on those two guys. Those are our two guards. Both of those started last year for us. Dylan at the center spot. I moved him to guard this year, and they're doing really good. But I've got some young guys that have stepped up and some new guys that have stepped up into leadership, which is very good for me looking forward, because I've got young guys that are out there playing well and willing to step in a leadership role as well. But no, Cole LeClaire and Dylan Dozer are the two guys that everyone kind of looks to whenever things going awry.
Ryan Allgood is our guest here on the PokeCast. A question for you on this is, you're going to be blocking against Florida this week.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They're bigger. I saw some sizes when I was putting in their lineup.
Yep.
Do you have to do something different with that because they're so big and so quick?
Well, yes. There's certain guys whenever you play that you've got to adjust your scheme a little bit to how you're going to block them. I know they're two nose guards. One of them's 365, the other one's 440. And so they are very large. And a lot of times inside, we've got different schemes that we've worked, and so we'll, depending on how they're playing us, we'll be able to adjust and see if we can't get a couple more double teams on those guys.
Is there a way to block 440 if it's moving?
Well, we've got the biggest guy on our team, or one of the bigger guys, is pretty close to 400 pounds, and we've been able to get him. He makes it really tough, but he's also one of those guys you got a game plan for, and so it's definitely doable. It's shown on film, but you've got to be good with it.
When we come back on McNeese PokeCast, I always say podcast, PokeCast, we're going to talk about the recruiting wars, about recruiting through NIL,
Yep.
and about the competition that's out there. When we come back after this.
Mr. Bill's Seafood Express, located at 500 East McNeese Street in Lake Charles, is locally owned and operated. Don't forget to check out Mr. Bill's Seafood Express daily lunch specials Monday through Friday. Mr. Bill's Seafood Express also has live music every Thursday and Saturday night. Chad Pusall and Jason Guillory, the owners of Mr. Bill's Seafood Express, proudly support the McNeese Cowboys. Mr. Bill's Seafood Express, 500 East McNeese Street in Lake Charles, says, "Go Pokes!"
The McNeese PokeCast is also brought to you by Keelan Construction. Keelan Construction is South Louisiana's leading vertical and horizontal general contractor. Keelan courageously pursues complex challenges to advance further the life and culture of our staff and the communities we serve. And also brought to you by Southwest Beverage. Rooted in the community of Southwest Louisiana since 1954, Southwest Beverage has been a family-owned and operated business for 3 generations. Bud Light and Southwest Beverage has been a loyal supporters of McNeese State University for over 30 years by providing athletic scholarships as well as scholarships for students. We pride ourselves on being the premier beverage supplier in Southwest Louisiana and will continue to be here for many years to come. Thank you for your support of our brands and McNeese Athletics, and as always, go Pokes.
We're back with the McNeese PokeCast here at Mr. Bill's. Want to thank our sponsors for week 2. This was actually supposed to be the original first week. We got an early start. Ryan Allgood is our guest here first, the offensive line coach at McNeese State, also recruiting coordinator and assistant head coach.
Right.
So Gary Goff didn't warn you about this show?
Oh, no. I didn't ask him too much about it.
He seems like he's an all-pro at it. He's on everything nowadays. He seems to. Do you guys get used to how much attention you get here at McNeese?
I don't know if you get used to it. I mean, we're still ball coaches, so we just want to sit in our dark room and watch film. But it's.
What do you think the fan engagement about here?
It's. I mean, I personally, I think it's pretty good. You know, I love being able to get out in the community when we have a chance and speaking and answering questions. I think it's great, and just to kind of let everybody get a little bit of a piece of what's really going on.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a lot of. We've had 20,000 people in the stadium before,
right?
Just as before the hurricanes. Since the hurricanes, seeing it ramp back up in the last couple of years has been kind of fascinating around here because there's a lot of people who kind of took it for granted for years. Then when we didn't have it, then we were playing at noon in 100-degree weather. Now they're getting back to the normal. They're kind of it's interesting to see how it's ramped up for you guys. Getting into the recruiting world.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Which is has to be the toughest thing you do now, isn't it? Because there is so much competition on all sorts of levels, especially with NIL money, especially with the transfer portal now. You're almost re-recruiting as you recruit every year, aren't you?
Oh, for sure, for sure. We've got to make sure that for our guys, our teams, and it's a lot easier to retain our guys as far as making sure that those guys are happy with what's going on in the program, and they want to, again, kind of like I talked about earlier with the culture and being able to win games. Guys want to be a part of a great culture and a great tradition and a program that's winning, and so that's kind of where it starts, but also your guys have to like how you're coaching them and feel like you can coach them to the potential to reach the next level, which everybody's got dreams of playing in the NFL, the CFL, whatever it is after college. And so as long as your players know that you care for them, they're in a great culture and a winning program, and they know that their coach can help them get to that level, I think a lot of them want to stick around. But it's on our end, it's a never-ending deal. I've got a guy texted me last night at 1 o'clock just asking me something, making sure everything was okay. And it's one of those things that I enjoy that, but I want players to be able to do that for us. And I think whenever recruiting is, you're trying to get players to see that and get within you. I think it's spending time with them and their family, and I think it's important.
You guys are a very young football team. With that, you only have 4 seniors.
Right.
How do you recruit a class when only 4 seniors are coming? What's your class going to look like next year?
It's very difficult to kind of see how that class is. There's a couple positions where we might be able to recruit some incoming freshmen, but we've also got to plan on guys leaving. As you talked about with the transfer portal, there's probably going to be guys that leave that we are unaware of, and most of those guys are going to be guys that are playing for us or have the potential to play next year. So that's one of those things that we have to look at, and not only are we recruiting the high school guys, but we've got to recruit guys that have college experience that could come in. So that's where we also have to recruit some transfers to fill in some holes where guys who we need to play right away can come in.
It used to be that you would cut off at a certain point in time, but you guys were recruiting right up until mid-May.
Oh, yes.
Weren't you this year?
Right. Yeah. No, it doesn't stop, and they've got windows now for transfer recruits to be able to come in, and whenever they're going to say they're going to leave. But whenever you've got a hole, if you've got time to recruit to fill that hole, you're trying to look for it, and so that'll go all the way up until then.
The one thing we see is the COVID-7, I call it, the kid playing his 7th or 8th year in college because of COVID. McNeese doesn't have a COVID-7, do they? Do you have one?
I think we've got one. I'm not 100% sure. I know we had an old game playing, McNeese versus Nebraska earlier today on the Jumbotron, and I think one of our guys made a comment to one of the other players on the team that he was there at that time. So we've got some older guys, but we don't have very many. So
with that, when does that kind of end? Do we see an end in sight when we won't see that? A 6-7 year guy? Or is that just a part of it now?
No, I think so. I think with the 7-year guys, especially, it's going to be a little while because of the COVID and those guys getting that extra year, and then guys getting medical red shirts with their other red shirts. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but those guys are still able to stick around, and that's also why I think the roster management's the way it is right now. And there's so many. There's actually a lot of rosters out there that either have a lot of upperclassmen or a lot of underclassmen just because of how teams have built their rosters since then.
All right, let's get back to your offensive line, because we're 2 years removed from an offensive line that had to play, if I recall, the second season of 2021, where we had a time when we had 2 redshirt freshmen and a true freshman. 2 of them were walk-ons starting.
Right.
How have you built that up in the last 2 years? Because that seems to be the hardest position to build on a football team these days, is getting kids to want to play offensive line.
Yeah, it's definitely not easy. I know Coach Goff has said it to me many times. There's offensive linemen are like unicorns anymore. They're just hard to find, and they are. And it's hard to find the guys that you want that fit the mold, but also guys who, like you said, just love football and love the position, because it's not an easy one. It's a tough position to play, and you're beating on each other all the time, and you don't get a whole lot of glory. It's kind of a very selfless position, and so to find those guys that love it and are willing to come and compete very hard every day for their teammates is it's something that in recruiting you just have to straight up ask guys how much they love the game, ask other people how much they love it to find out if they're willing to.
I believe you're starting a redshirt freshman.
Yes.
At left tackle.
Yep.
The toughest position on the field, probably.
Well, he's at right tackle.
Right tackle?
He's at right tackle.
All right.
Yep.
When you're starting a redshirt freshman or a freshman in general, that's his first game.
Yes.
What do you worry about most? Do you give him a lot of help, or?
Well, it's really trying to make sure, one, that in preparing him for that game, it's coaching him up really hard so that he knows the technique of everything he's going to do. And that's one of the things that I told him. And I kind of told my whole group that everybody is on their own experience, whether they're their first game ever in college in 2 years, because I know Hayes, our starting right tackle, he redshirted last year, so this was his first game in 2 years and his first college game. But other guys, it was their first game at McNeese and there's a lot of different experiences going on, and so preparing those guys for that, I told Hayes and some of the other guys, whenever you get nervous or whenever you don't know how to block someone, fall back on the technique that you know to do. Don't try to do anything extra. Fall back on your technique. It's just those first couple steps, and then play football.
Does an offensive line coach like the air raid offense? Wouldn't you rather go out there and just blow the other guy off the ball?
I definitely would, but I've been in it so long now that it's I actually enjoy it, and I have a lot of fun in it for sure.
When we get to talking about transfers in particular, you guys really went out and hit the junior college level.
We did.
Especially in the defensive backfield. What was your thinking behind that? What was the reasoning for that? And what have you learned from it?
Right. Well, what I kind of mentioned on when we first got here a couple years ago, we went out to try to bring transfers in to build up the roster, and a lot of those guys came from FBS programs or other Division I schools, a couple of them from D2 programs, but they were 4-year transfers, and a couple of them panned out really good for us. Our starting running back actually was a Division II guy that came in last year, played really well before he got injured, and he's back. And but a lot of those guys, it was might have been the thought that they were coming down a level and so they were above it, or you've always got those different issues that come up. And so that was one reason that we wanted to look at the JUCO, but also Mississippi junior colleges are right down the road from us. And so with them being so close, I think that they fit in what we want. And that's a really hard and tough league. And so I think we were able to go over there and build some really good relationships with some coaches over there. And I think it was really good to us. And those players are playing well as well.
We got a question. Who's got the microphone? Hello? Who's got the microphone? Oh, we got a question from someone in the crowd? Yeah, we're coming right over to you.
Hate to interrupt such a good conversation. Coach, maybe you can do a little clarification. A lot of people in my section were asking Saturday night about the substitution rule when that coach milked the clock down to where we wound up getting a delay of game penalty, getting a substitute back in. Looked like he waited till about 10 seconds and the guy trots out, and then we don't have but 5 seconds to go.
Right.
That was a crucial play, actually.
It was a crucial play, and that's something that we worked on really hard throughout camp. We actually, during our scrimmages, we had officials there, and we tried to do the same thing ourselves on defense, where if they sub late, then we're going to take our time to get out there to run that clock down. And the referees are supposed to not let it take that long. You can't just take a lot of time, but also on our end, getting those guys out there in time. But you never know. That's kind of a questionable deal by the ref on how long they want to give the defense. But they're supposed to let it kind of run fast, so that doesn't happen. So it's just one of those deals with college football and the way they're trying to change the game a little bit that we hope that doesn't happen that much at all. Yes, yeah, they're allowed to hold it. They're allowed to hold it, and it's a certain time. But it's just again, it's kind of one of those rules, just like the running clock now. The game's faster, but at that time, the defense gets more time to sub. There's also a new rule where if one of our guys gets tackled out of bounds on our sideline, the defense gets time to sub. So it kind of slows us down to where we can't even do our up-tempo offense anymore if we get tackled out of bounds on our sideline, because there's a chance that it is a sub coming out on the field. So there's a lot of new rules that, again, with as the season goes on, I think all that stuff does get cleaned up, but there are new rules that we're all just getting used to.
How did you guys do with the clock, the running clock? You still got, each team got 78 plays, so it wasn't a dramatic difference.
It really wasn't, and that was another reason why we really tried to add a little bit more tempo plays in, just to keep our play number where it was. I know in our scrimmage, when we had the running clock, we actually thought we were going to get closer to 60 plays. And so I think we were all, with the play count anyways, pretty happy with it. Obviously, we'd like to have
He'd like 100, wouldn't he?
I'm all right with that, because I got to grade 5 guys after the game. So the higher that play count gets, the longer it takes me.
You also got some depth this year that you didn't have
on
the offensive line.
We do.
How many guys can you go deep?
Well, really, if I put my first 2 groups out there, I think we've got a chance to win, which is very hard to do. I know last year it got down to where the 6th or maybe 7th guy in, I was starting to worry a little bit. But I trust my guys. I think they're playing well, and I've got a couple guys that actually one of the transfers that got with us during the summer, he's a guy that continues to progress. So he's in a backup role, and it's one of those things that the young guys that are our number 2s right now, they're all learning and still gaining throughout the season, and whenever their number is called, I think they're going to be ready. So we definitely we travel 10 guys, and I think all of them can go out there for us.
What's it mean for a coaching staff to get an opportunity to play against a Florida?
Yeah, well, it's one of those deals. You kind of look at it and you kind of see what they do, and like you said, they've got big guys, especially up front. I think offensively, that's where a lot of the brunt comes, because in the SEC, they recruit so that their front 7 can dominate. That's why a lot of the SEC offensive lines are really big to handle those D-lines, and that's why they got 400-pound nose tackles. And so for us, it's looking at ways like, how can we put our guys in positions to be successful, and so that we're not going out there. We've got to change things up a little bit, and so I think that's the trick.
Ryan Alga's been with us here for the first half hour, offensive line coach at McNeese State, also recruiting coordinator, also assistant head football coach. Ryan, thanks for joining us. Good luck at Florida. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
The McNeese PokeCast is also brought to you by Southwest Louisiana Credit Union. Southwest Louisiana Credit Union now offers an account just for McNeese students. It's the Blue and Gold checking account. All it takes is $5 to get you in. You get a free debit card, online and mobile banking, and access to a smart ATMs. There's no service charge. You can even get free financial counseling. That's why Southwest Louisiana Credit Union is now the official credit union for McNeese students and McNeese athletics. Find out more at swlacu.com. To open a Blue and Gold checking account, go by Southwest Louisiana Credit Union at 4056 Ryan Street, about a block away from campus. Membership is required. As the oldest athletic booster organization at McNeese, the McNeese Cowboy Club is proud to continue providing support to all McNeese athletes for 49 years. We meet every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. in the Cowboy Club room located over the south end zone with talks from coaches and other leaders in McNeese athletics. Come join us and discover what being a McNeese athletic booster is all about. And go Pokes.
We're back with the McNeese PokeCast here at Mr. Bill's. Want to thank Ryan Allgood for joining us right now. We got Sasha Karlov, volleyball coach. Coach, your second year. What's different? What's new? And what did you learn last year?
A lot is different, for sure. We have a brand new team. We had 10 newcomers this year, which is pretty different. Normally, volleyball recruiting class, you have like 4 or 5, but we had so many seniors last year, and then we had a lot of fifth-year COVID kids, so we just had a lot of spots to fill, and so 6 freshmen and 2 transfers, and that was a big part of it, is learning to work with a team that was a lot younger. Last year, we had a bunch of 20, 21-year-old kids. This year, we have 2 17-year-olds, and we just have a lot of learning and growing to do even off the court. So I think that's been my biggest struggle and something I'm learning in my second year.
One thing you said when I talked to you earlier in the year, doing the preview story, was that this was now your team, that you had recruited kind of your team. What does that mean to you moving forward?
Yeah, I think the style of play that we're doing this year is definitely more so my style. We're not as tall, but we're really quick off the ground. We're very physical. We touch high. I mean, we have a few girls that their verticals are in the 28, 29 range, so we can play at a faster tempo, which is important. And I feel like for us, that is going to be our biggest strength in the conference, is I think we're going to be able to beat people higher and quicker than we were last year.
If you have a question for Coach, just raise your hand and we'll get a microphone to you. So you get a new young team and you decide to hit them with a really tough early schedule. What was your thoughts behind that, going to BYU, going to Auburn, kind of testing them early?
Honestly, I thought we'd be 4-3 right now. I didn't think we'd be 1-6, but I'm pretty optimistic going into it. I mean, I knew, honestly, I thought we were going to be 7-0. Just kidding. I thought we were going to be 7-0. No. Seriously, I think my mentality my whole life has been, you got to play the best to become the best. In my playing career, in my coaching career, you got to compete against the best. Like, if we just wanted to win, we could play a middle school team and we could feel good about that, right? But it's not about winning right now. I think we want to peak at the right time. We want to peak at the end of the season during the conference tournament. And the reality is, in the conference tournament, you got to be really good 3 or 4 days straight. And I think we've tested this young team early this season to prepare for the long haul.
So it's more about getting them experience. When you go to a tournament like Auburn or something like that, how important is it for you guys to be together as a young team, be on the road, to get out on the road? Because you played your first 6 matches on the road, to be out on the road to get to know each other and kind of bond. Yeah,
I think for us it's more important probably than any other sport. Maybe soccer can relate. We had 17 days to prepare for our first match. So you can imagine, not only in the gym, we had to get to know each other and get comfortable, but also off the court. So that was a big thing for me, is doing team bonding and things off the court so that we could have a stronger bond on the court. And then when we went on our first road trip, we made sure to make time in the hotel to spend some quality time together, whether that was study hall or team activities. When we do have free time, we do like to enjoy it together.
When you have someone like a young team, but you have a Bailey Tillman on the team, somebody that can kind of be there, has been there, was a big part of last year's run, what does that mean to you?
It means a lot. I mean, I'm very close with her. I played the position that she plays. I'm very hard on her. She has turned into a really, really big leader for us vocally. She's a quiet type of person. She's not overly or outwardly competitive by nature, but she's had to train herself to be very out loud and very vocal to the younger kids and set that example, not only with her outstanding play, but also being able to hold people accountable. And I'm really proud of what she's done so far.
You came from Corpus Christi, where you won championships, helped win championships as an assistant coach. But you come to McNeese. What were the expectations there? Because in your first year last year, you guys made a run and were in it until the last week of the season.
Expectations, I mean, I'm always going for the win. If we're not going for a championship, why are we here, right? But we don't talk about that a lot, and I don't talk about it a lot with my team. Obviously, when I was at Corpus, again, it wasn't something we talked about every day. We talked about the process and what we can do on a daily basis to get to the end result. And for me, especially this year, has been all about growth because it's such a young team. So I'm really not trying to get caught up in, the wins and losses and whatnot. It's the daily growth that we can do because honestly, the young kids are growing exponentially, especially in such a short period of time. So that makes me excited for the future, not just this year, but the following years to come.
Tasha Karlov is our guest on McNeese PokeCast. I'm going to say podcast forever. On the PokeCast. I named it and I can't even get it right. One of the things that you guys did last year, which really kind of excited people, was you made it kind of an event to be at a volleyball game, much more so than before. How do you build on that and kind of make it so that people still want to come out, but also turn the area around a bit onto volleyball? It's not been a big area for volleyball over the years, but you seem to have grown interest in it. How do you keep building on that?
Show personality. I tell the girls all the time, people are always watching you. Show yourself, advocate for yourself, take ownership of your experience. I've made it a point to go out in the community with my team as well as myself and actually buy into the Louisiana culture. Most of my team's not from Louisiana, and I think there's something to be said for that. People who actually want to be part of this family culture, people love that. People in this community love that, and they can vibe with that. And so regardless of if they don't know the sport or they do know the sport, they see a personality and they see a story and they want to come watch that. And volleyball in itself is pretty fast-paced, and I enjoy seeing the looks on people's faces when they're at the games because it's just, nonstop, ball back and forth, and, big kills and big blocks can make people celebrate pretty hard. So it's a fun sport to watch.
Do you also find yourself doing a lot with high schools to try to build up their programs because there hasn't been a lot of that here?
Yes, I mean, I think my goal coming in, I wanted to make sure I was befriending all the high school coaches. A lot of them are alumni from McNeese volleyball as well, so that's been a big goal of mine as well, to kind of bridge that gap because there's not much of a relationship between alumni and the coaches before. And then we've hosted our team camp every summer too, and we've gotten a lot of high school teams to sign up for that.
Does beach volleyball coming to the area help you?
Yes. Well, Louisiana actually is the home for two of the best beach volleyball players in the world, if you didn't know. Kristen Nuss and Taryn Cloth, they played at LSU. So the state of Louisiana is actually not new to beach volleyball. There's lots of schools that have it. It's just a little bit newer in Lake Charles, but because we have South Beach down the road, I think that's helped a ton. It's given people a sense of community and learning the sport while having fun out there.
Yeah, I think you're doing, as much as anything else, you kind of have to teach the area of the sport, don't you?
Yeah, for sure.
Last year's championship run, you still have a new team this year, so you're kind of going to have to reteach what you went through at the end last year. But what does that mean as far as getting recruits to make sure that you can build a program and make another run at it, how can you build off of that?
I think, for me, like recruiting, your team, your current players are your biggest recruiting tool. So if we can give them the best experience, day in and day out, obviously a lot of that has to do with their mindset and attitude, but also for us as a staff, we do our best to keep it fun, keep it exciting, show our personalities, have good energy, and they vibe with that. So then when we bring recruits on campus, the kids just it's an easy sell. They spend a lot of time with my players, and I make that a point. And so for the future, next year we're going to have probably 2 to 3 new players, which is very different from the last 2 years. And I'm kind of excited about that. But at the same time, for me personally, I think what's exciting is the freshmen right now, when they're sophomores, they're going to be the ones leading the charge because they're doing all their growing pains right now. Is
it exciting to be having last year's team, but also now all of a sudden you're almost rebuilding off of that?
Yes. I'll be honest, it is frustrating at times because I feel like I'm just a constant, recorder. Like I'm just saying the same stuff over and over again. And even my staff will be like, oh, I've told her that 10 times. I'm like, okay, we'll tell her 11 times. Like we just got to keep doing it, and we got to keep staying patient with them as they stay patient with us. Because not only are a lot of them new to the area or new to college, they're new to the system because our system's very different than other teams. And then they're also away from their families, and there's a lot of stress that comes through that. So,
yeah, how much, when you have a young team like that, how much of that, especially the first month and a half of a season where they're just starting to learn how to be in college, where to go to college, what to do, how to study on their own and learn all that, how much are you having to watch over that as much as you are volleyball in itself? Because a spring sport or even a fall sport, you have time to build into that, where you're almost immediately playing and going to school on the same days.
It's a lot of micromanaging, for sure. We have a good system with that, especially with academics. Our academic advisors are amazing people and great advocates for them. And Miss Sandy works with our team. So our biggest, core value is connection, and we make sure to connect with all aspects of our program all the time. And I'm on top of it. I have, as a head coach, I do academic meetings with 3 of the girls on my team, and then my assistant coach does some with other girls. And those are 30-minute meetings where we check in on every class and make sure they're on top of everything they need. And so, I don't know, I think even just individual meetings are important. I think head coaches don't do that enough. You have to make time for the student athletes one-on-one. You have to make sure you're on top of, because things can slip through the cracks, and before you know it, they could be outer space, not paying attention, not worrying about championships or winning or anything. They could be doing their own thing on their own island. And I think when you meet with them constantly, you know what's going on all the time. You can nip it in the bud early. And
do you find yourself having to do a lot of kind of going over that consistently, especially with freshmen? That
yes.
Reinforcing the rules, reinforcing the learning how to work your time. Because how to schedule your time as a freshman is one of the hardest things you have to do, especially first semester.
100%. And I always build off my own personal experience. I played 2 sports in college, and I've coached for a while. I try to give them advice, my own personal advice, and I'll be honest, I wasn't always the smartest person in the room or whatever, but I worked my tail off. I went to a high academic school, but I did what I needed to do, and I didn't make it a problem for my coaches. And that's what I tell them, just do your job. And that way we don't have to stress about it. Take care of your stuff off the court so that you can play free on the court. And then you're setting yourself up for success when the sport's done, because the reality is volleyball is not a big thing professionally in the States, so they need to set themselves up for the future.
And what's been your biggest surprise in the first year and a half you've been here?
Biggest surprise? I don't know. That's stumping me. Biggest surprise?
The heat?
I would say this summer, definitely the heat. Last summer wasn't as bad. Biggest surprise would probably be that the support within the community, the athletic department. I feel really comfortable with everybody, and I didn't know if that was going to happen so organically. It's cool that I can go to anybody's office, marketing and Sandy and John Lemke and all these people, and I feel like I could truly talk to them as a coworker, but also a friend. I think that's pretty unique, and I've never felt like that at any school I've been at.
We're going to take our final break here of the night and come back with Sasha Karlov after this on the McNeese PokeCast.
The McNeese PokeCast is also brought to you by Twisted Vines. They offer residential and commercial lawn and landscaping maintenance, irrigation and drainage installation and repairs, outdoor landscaping, lighting, holiday and event light installation also with 3D drawings. Contact Ryan Boyd at 337-274-2267 or email info@twistedvineslc.com. Like them on Facebook and follow on Instagram at twistedvineslc. If you mention you heard the Twisted Vines on the podcast, you will receive a 10% discount off your purchase. And Pompelli Tire, official tire store of McNeese Athletics. Experts in tires, EV-specific tires as well. We do more than just tires. Mechanical work as well. A full-time mechanic is on site at all times to help in your needs.
We're back on 92.9 The Lake and from Mr. Bills on the McNeese PokeCast. Just for everybody who thinks I'm going to pronounce it wrong the whole time. I'm not always going to pronounce it wrong. When you go to a BYU or somewhere out there, are you trying to set a new brand kind of for McNeese volleyball? Are you trying to get out there and show them what you're doing? Because you're going out there nationally. Obviously, it's not the paycheck like McNeese is going to get for football at Florida, but you are setting kind of a standard, and you have to recruit nationally more than most places because there's not here. Are you getting some attention to seeing the brand grow?
100%. That's a big reason why we made that trip. I think exposure for our own team, different regions play the game a little differently, but also exposure for the McNeese brand and recruiting. It's a huge recruiting tool. There's kids out there in Utah and Idaho that probably have never heard of McNeese, and when they see us competing against BYU, they're like, okay, maybe I could give Louisiana a try.
When you bring kids into Louisiana, how do you sell it?
Family, fun.
Food,
yep, the 3 main F's. I just had a recruit call right before I got here, so I was telling her about how fun it is here. She was like, what do you guys do for fun? I'm like, well, we like to eat. It's a good time. That's
one of the big selling points here is the food from outside. I know softball does a lot of that, is they do a lot of selling of the food and the culture. When you look at the conference, you've been in it for a few years now. Where does McNeese stand, and how much has the conference grown in volleyball over the years? Because it was always a 1 or 2 team conference. Now there seems to be 3-4 teams started building up. Have you seen that grow?
100%. I mean, I think when UCA, Sam Houston, SFA left, that was definitely a big hole because they were very competitive in the conference for a few years. But then it's honestly elevated everybody else's game. Now you've got HCU, you've got, obviously Corpus has always been pretty strong. Southeastern has really made a change. Jeremy's done a good job there. So I feel like, especially with scheduling, more so the last couple of years, teams have been scheduling tougher and getting, these higher RPI games, which is helping the whole conference as a whole rise our level of play.
Yeah, the thing about RPI and conferences, people don't understand that that's how you build a conference is almost from the bottom. You have to build the bottom up first, because if you don't have, if you're not getting any credit for beating the people you're beating within the conference, that's going to narrow you and kill you at the end, isn't it?
100%. I mean, even yes, we got swept by BYU and Auburn, but I think there's a lot obviously to learn from those, but at the same time, you take a set or you take 2 sets off a team like that, or even a loss to them is sometimes better for your RPI than winning against a team that's 350 in RPI. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of the chance you got to take when you're scheduling.
Well, that's one of the things that if people know about the building of softball here, that's what they did, is they went out and they played the best for a couple of years, got beat up a little bit, but started to make a name for themselves, started to get kids, especially from California and the West Coast, to come in here and look at the school and say, hey, they're playing out here. That's kind of how you build a program, isn't it?
Yep. And
you got to take your lumps sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, to me, again, how do you become the best and how do you elevate your game? You try to mimic what the best are doing, right? And you still got to stay true to yourself, because obviously you don't want to be fake. You want to stay true to your identity, but I think it's really important to see what the best teams are doing, regardless of sports. I mean, what softball is able to do on a national scene, like, I want to be able to do that too, you know? And I think you're right. It does start with scheduling.
Okay, so we got Bailey that everybody knows about. But who are some of the younger players that you brought in this year that we're going to hear about that you think have a good future here?
So Carissa Cheney is a junior college transfer. She's a junior, upperclassman, but new to McNeese. She's number 7. She has a 28-inch vertical. She's only 5'8", maybe, on a good day. But this kid flies, and she's one of our good go-to players. Incredible person as well. Has become a leader for us. So she's definitely somebody you guys need to keep an eye on. I've already heard from lots of people that they enjoy watching her play. And, you know, we've got Sunny Rantanen, who's the returning freshman of the year of the conference. So, you know, she's working through some stuff right now, but, you know, she's had a lot of really good practices the last few days, and she played really well against Southern last night. So I think she's coming into her own, and she's going to be a big returning piece for us this year. And then as far as any other newcomers, I would say Kayla Wilson as well. She's a sophomore transfer from Memphis, another high-flying outside hitter, really quick off the ground, and very infectious personality, very competitive kid.
When you go out and you play some of the tough people you've played, and you lose some early games with a young team, how do you keep them to understand about the process? What's kind of your message to them to make sure they understand that it's a long season, not a short season?
Reminders, you know, post-team talks, it's all about growth. And we talk about playing clean volleyball. Like, we don't talk about going out there and getting the win and whatever. Everybody wants to win, but we want to play clean. And I'll be honest, we haven't been playing that clean. And we've been talking about it. And we've been watching video more than I've ever watched with student athletes one-on-one. Making time for that every week, as you can probably imagine, is hard just because we have crazy schedules, but we're truly maximizing all of our time together, which I think is going to pay off at the end of the season.
The biggest difference between being an assistant coach and a head coach?
Decision maker. Head coach, everybody's looking for you to make a decision. So, and you're held accountable for every decision you make. So it better be thought out, but at times you have to just do it. You can't really, sometimes you don't have time to think about it, and you got to just do what is best for the team with individuals in mind.
Did you guys understand last year that the importance of the tournament, and as that kind of resonated throughout the team, that it's one thing to be the regular season, but you have to be playing your best at the tournament?
Yes. I mean, we talk about the season being in phases, right? Like, you got your preseason, you got your conference regular season, you got your conference tournament postseason, and then hopefully NCAAs. And I told them from day one that we're going to be peaking at the right time. We're not thinking about, oh, we need to play our best right now, or we need to reach our potential. We haven't talked about that. We said it on the first day, and we haven't said anything about that again, because we're focusing on the growth and the process. And especially with freshmen, they're going to realize really quick, I mean, it's anybody can beat anybody on any given day, especially in the regular season. But what truly, in my opinion, counts is who can show up in that tournament, who can be consistent for 3 to 4 days straight, who can stay healthy, stay together, and finish at the top.
And what did you learn last year in that? Did this group learn?
Composure. You know, Southeastern, they played with a lot of composure last year. I thought, I mean, obviously they hosted, so it's a lot easier to stay composed when you're at home. But I think we had opportunities and we didn't rise up. We got a little tentative. We got a little hesitant to be aggressive and make plays. So starting from day one with this season, you know, obviously I threw them through the gauntlet with Auburn and BYU, so they should feel pretty good, especially against BYU when we had, I don't know how many people in the stands, but it was an incredible atmosphere, and those girls are going to remember that for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, because they draw very well at BYU. What was that atmosphere like, and what can you take from that as a young team, especially because they're never going to be in that atmosphere probably the rest of the year? What can they take from that as they play in the Southland?
It's just volleyball. It's the same size court. It's the same size ball. All the things are the same. Those are still 18 to 22-year-old girls on the other side of the net. They might be 6 inches taller than us or a little bit more physical, but at the end of the day, they're worrying about the same things we're worrying about. So I think if you dumb it down a little bit and just zoom out and think like, hey, we're all struggling with the same stuff. Let's just enjoy the moment. Let's stay in the moment, and then good volleyball, clean volleyball will happen organically.
The kids on football talking a lot about getting their opportunity to play at Florida. Was it the same for your kids at BYU?
Yes, I would say it's very similar. The experience, like the environment, even as a coach, like I was so stoked, like being on the sidelines and seeing all these volleyball people in the crowd, like who know the sport, who thrive off of the sport, and like I honestly had goosebumps because I'm like, that's the kind of stuff you look forward to, and if we could take a set off a team like that, even better, and I think one day we will, and that's the goal, is like, again, playing the best so we know what to strive for. So
do you find yourself able to kind of emulate that program a little bit as you on a smaller level?
Yes, I mean, their defense specifically, their block and back row defense has always been solid. They're actually well known for that for years. Heather Olmstead, the head coach, does a really, really good job. And so that is actually something I talked about on my interview before I went out there, is how like we actually talk about their defense and how disciplined they are, and we want to emulate that as well.
And winning the Southland Conference, is that the big goal this year?
100%.
How do you do that? How do you build this thing up?
Day by day, brick by brick, I'm not trying to think about the end right now. I really am taking it one day at a time. I'm trying to unite this team with, again, these youngins. I got to get them going. I got to keep reminding them of what's important, truly important, and I want them to realize that they can be great and unite the older kids and the younger kids so that we're thriving at the end of the season.
Next time you're at home, next home game?
Friday night at 6:30.
And who do you play?
Southeast Missouri State, and we have 2 matches Saturday, 1 o'clock and 6:30 as well.
In the Legacy Center.
In the Legacy Center on the other side of the basketball arena. So,
I want to thank Sasha Karloff for joining us on McNeese PokeCast. I did it again. People are getting excited when I mess up. Going to give you a couple of comments after this to finish up the show. Thank you, Coach, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, a couple of things to follow up on. McNeese plays Florida. 6:30 is kickoff on ESPNU. Thank you, Michael. I was going to mention that, but Michael threw that at me to make sure I knew, thinking I didn't know that. It is their only time on linear ESPN this year, so it is an interesting time for them to show up. I want to point out this is the third SEC team they will have played. It is the fourth team overall because they played Missouri before they were in the SEC. It's the first time they've played at Florida. It is not the first time they've played in Florida. The last time McNeese played in Florida, not to put any pressure on anybody in the room, but they beat South Florida 52-21, or 53-21 in 2013. So they have some history of actually winning against FBS schools in the state of Florida. So just know, Coach, there's a little thing for you, Coach. All good, just to let you know. Also, I want to point out to people, because a lot of people have asked me about this, was this team overhyped? If you would have watched them play just so people know, if you watched them play during the year, during the spring, that was a completely different football team that played the other night. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes on. Also point out to people that the Southland Conference itself went 1-7. There are a lot of new players in the Southland Conference. There's a lot of things that are wide open. The conference is completely wide open this year. And the reason for that is everybody went in the transfer portal, including half the league's coaches. So I'm just going to wait a month and see where McNeese is at before I really kind of judge where they are. But I get the disappointment. I get the understanding. But let's see where they are in a couple weeks, and we'll all get through it, folks. Don't get too excited. We'll see you next week on the PokeCast. Yeah! There you go.
All right.
Thank you.